Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 2, day 1 of Top 1 Performers. I apologize for the mess in the background. See the guitars back there. I'm just in the process of switching around my office. I need to find the right home for those guitars. I play guitar. I've been playing guitar for 33 years. So last week was the introduction to the program. We covered what we're going to do through the program and much of the foundation of the program from which all the weeks are built from. And then specifically focusing on us as leaders in that first week. And as a reminder, we talked about value generation and the importance of reliability and how these things come together to form patterns and how those patterns are facilitated through the creation and adoption of habits and what constitutes a good habit, one of the levers of habit forming. And we talked about motivation, two types of motivation, transient motivation and sustainable motivation. And we also discussed accessibility. So the degree in which any given task is hard or easy, and how we can pull on these two different levers to increase the probability that we create habits. And by increasing the probability of creating a habit and creating more and more habits, how this helps us to build our leadership practice. In fact, each one of these weeks is a habit in the larger sense that we're looking to develop. And for this week, we are going to focus on empowering others as leaders and what that habit looks like. So we are not only driven by our motivations and the degree in which a task at hand is easy or hard, our team is as well. So we can apply that same formula that we have to ourselves to better understanding how we can help and to get tasks and create habits with our own team members through pulling on things that might motivate them or coaching them or mentoring them on motivation, and also helping them to break through hard tasks, making tasks easier. The same approaches that we use for ourselves, we can use with others to increase the probability that any given task and the habit we want to create around it can also be done for our team members. And we can do it in a way that is not micromanaging and empowers that team because they develop a sense of ownership. Remember, in the first week, we talked about like taking control of our own destiny and making commitments and freedom and what's in our control. And we can use these same approaches with our own team members to empower them. So what are we going to focus on this week? It's these topics that you see on the screen. So expectation setting, we'll cover that today. Then tomorrow we'll move on to being direct versus empathy. Sometimes people think these two things are at odds. I'll show you how to bring these two things together to really empower your team. And then when we're coaching our team and managing our team, what are the concepts of advising versus consulting in order to help our team members arrive to a solution? And another form of empowerment, whether it is during business planning or change management, is giving our team members the opportunity to contribute to some pretty significant things for the business, for the team that we are leading. And we'll talk about what that can actually mean and how just simply involving them in the process in itself can be empowering, regardless of how that might change the outcomes. And then finally, like as us as leaders, what does it really mean to understand the obstacles, the challenges that our team members are facing, and why it's important for us to understand that so that we can help to create equitable opportunities, equitable outcomes of success for our team members, and how that's crucial in our ability to lead and for us to be seen as leaders. So let's talk a little bit today about expectation setting. So First off, like what's our motivation to do this? It's all about setting and consistently communicating clear expectations because it's a reflection on our own leadership, and it should align ourselves and our team towards success. This is one of the biggest important things about expectation setting. And it also creates a perception around us as leaders, especially with those that could be our stakeholders and perhaps our career gatekeepers. So when we don't do this, if you're ever wondering why there might be some confusion on your team, perhaps there isn't clarity in expectations. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and how to resolve it in just a moment. But the outcome of that is demotivation, so the opposite of the M in the habit formula. And it creates higher degrees of difficulty. So we're actually decreasing the accessibility by making things more difficult. So it's this compounding effect in our habit and behavioral science formula that we're focusing on. So let's make it easy. Defining expectations. Well, what are the right expectations? I'm not going to cover that in today's session. We will focus on that in the strategy week, but let's focus on the other pieces in this area. So going back to the importance of commitment and the freedom that it creates and the control that it gives us, let's commit to expectations. And one area that we can commit is how we prioritize things. So as leaders, we need to make decisions on the things that we and our team members work on. Well, what's your decision framework for that? And where are expectations in that? And are you constantly prioritizing the decisions you make based upon the expectations, or do you have more of a free form, ad hoc, in the moment, coming from your gut approach? If you have more of the latter, you perhaps maybe intuitively you're prioritizing against expectations, but it's really important here to be thoughtful and very explicit about doing this exercise. So a way to do this is simply to ask yourself a question when you're about to make a decision or give a team member some guidance or direction. Ask yourself, is this aligning to the expectations of my expectations as a leader? Is it aligning to the expectations of what we need to do as a team? And also something to consider is the expectations of the person. Is it aligning to maybe their expectations? And we'll go more into defining these things a little bit later on. And the next point is not only prioritizing and making our decisions based upon expectations, but also aligning ourselves and our team to those expectations. So are you consciously thinking about the expectations? And when you're asking team members to focus on certain things, are you driving that focus through by aligning, by constantly thinking about the expectation, where you need to focus, prioritizing through your decision making? And then in terms of how you operate, is it always driving people towards those expectations? And one way to do that is through consistent communication of expectations. So how often in communications are you consciously communicating from a point of the expectation? So for example, do you have one-on-one meetings with your direct reports? Is the agenda structured? And in the agenda, are you prioritizing what's expected in the agenda, which goes back to the first point of prioritization? And then by doing that in the agenda, that helps to align to expectations. And if we make this standard practice in our one-on-ones, this then becomes a consistent communication. Now let's take the example of writing an email to our team or our stakeholders. And let's say that email, you've decided to do an update on a certain initiative on a monthly, weekly, 2 times a month basis. Do you know the expectations around that initiative? And are you prioritizing those in the communication and aligning what you're communicating to those expectations? Again, focusing on what the expectation is, prioritizing the decisions around it, aligning how we're communicating to those expectations, and then consistently communicating that out we're building a habit here around the consistent communication of expectations and the alignment and the prioritization. And by establishing this habit and bringing it all together, it enables us to really direct our team and stakeholders and ourselves in a way that is constantly aligned to the things that are most important to ourselves, our customers, others, stakeholders, our team members, etc. And one application of this is when we look at performance management. If we're not clear on the expectations and we're not actively communicating and consistently communicating them, when it comes time to do our performance management, we really can catch our team members off guard by telling them maybe something isn't where it needs to be. But if we're not consistently communicating the expectations of that, that could be a completely miss in our leadership and leading others and empowering others to be successful. So it's important to constantly drive, align, prioritize, and consistently communicate our expectations. So what are the action items? Of course, we've got a little exercise that'll just take a couple of minutes. And this exercise will help you to prioritize, align, and consistently communicate, and quickly set up a habit for yourself to do that. All right, so this concludes today's conversation. Tomorrow we'll focus on the next item on team empowerment. See you then.